Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God, green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your host, your brother, and your friend, Rashid. And this is a channel member stream. We're going to stream shortly, and we're going to see if we get a lot of participation. If not, we're just going to go on, stream, get some of the subjects out of the way, boom, and we're off running on something else. Okay, so today's show is titled "Closer, a Stepping Closer to War." Now, there was something that took place today or yesterday or whatever in Russia, and an article comes out today and it says terrorist attack in southern Russia. What we know so far, and it talks about militants targeting synagogues, churches, and the police in the region, the Russian region of Dagestan. Well, first of all, Dagestan is a mostly Muslim republic, right? It is a country inside of Russia. Russia is made up of multiple countries. That's why it's called the Russian Federation. Okay, we know that somehow out of this article they left out any mosques or any temples or masjids being hit, and I'm going to tell you why in just a few seconds. But let's go into the article, and I'm reading it with you for the first time. And it says, the southern Russian region of Dagestan was rocked on Sunday by a series of deadly attacks in two major cities in which assailants deliberately targeted worshippers at synagogues and Orthodox Christian churches. Now, in an investigation, they tell you that the things that the investigators or the detectives look for is motive, opportunity, and who benefits the most. Why would this take place in a mostly Muslim region in Russia? And why was it targeting synagogues and churches? It reminds me of when there's a big blowback about Israel or something pertaining to Jewish people or Jewish events in America, and then all of a sudden, if they're catching the back end of the stick, then somewhere a synagogue is spray painted on, or a pig head is put on the synagogue's doorstep, or a church is targeted or something like this, and then it gets the so-called religious right backing the Jewish people, and it gets the Christians angry at so-called Muslims. This was done in Afghanistan. This was done. America tried to do this in Tajikistan. They tried to do it in Kyrgyzstan. They've done it in Georgia. They're doing it in Ukraine. They have done it in Syria. They've done it in Iraq. They're trying to do it in Iran. They're doing it in Lebanon. They're doing it in Mali. They're doing it in Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso, Algeria, Tunisia. They're doing it in the Gambia. They've done it in just pretty much everywhere you want to go. This is a tried and true tested method of the U.S. intelligence services, the British intelligence services, and the Israeli intelligence services. Do you understand? This is not happening out of the blue. And it says, where did it happen? Dagestan is one of several Muslim majority regions in Russia's northern Caucasus that stretches along the coast of the Caspian Sea. The tragic scenes unfolded in the regional capital, and then it says a large city. It says in Derbent, Makhachkala and Derbent, a large city some 120 kilometers to the south. Now, this was strategic. This did not happen in a Christian majority province or republic in Russia. This happened on the Caspian Sea. You know, Iran and former Soviet republics, along with Russia, they all have a say over the Caspian Sea regional affairs, and that there's an agreement signed that no foreign nations can set up military bases or anything or be a part of what is in the Caspian Sea. Only those nations which border the Caspian Sea. There used to be something with the Black Sea also, but America just, with her NATO forces, they just up and just threw all that in the wind. So listen, this is to foment unrest, religious strife, division, and animosity between citizens. Because notice this happened in a Muslim majority region, and it's so-called only attacked Christian churches and Jewish synagogues. Man, these people, they are losing their minds, and they're doing things repetitive over and over again, and they believe that you're going to fall for it. Remember, Vicki Noonan said that there will be a lot of nasty surprises for Russia. Those were not empty words. Remember the writings and the saying of Hillary Clinton where they say that they should balkanize Russia? This is a step in balkanizing Russia. If you foment religious strife and divisions, ethnical tensions and divisions, right? And then you put economic pressure on a nation, and then you put more pressure by pushing your military bloc up to that nation's border and fomenting unrest all around that nation's periphery. That's what happens. If it's a weaker nation or a nation that is not economically savvy or politically savvy, guess what happens? We see a balkanization or we see a breakup of it, right? That is what they're trying to do. This is U.S., Israeli, UK, and NATO terror lessons 101. Okay? There's nothing new. And the brutality from what I've heard of how they murdered a priest in that. And it says the Durban synagogue that came under attack had recently strengthened its security with a police squad stationed outside and private security guards on the premises, according to the Russian Jewish Congress, a national religious organization. Now, they're saying that an Orthodox priest was brutally murdered. And they did this in a majority Muslim region. If that is not MI6 and MI5 and Mossad and Shin Bet and the CIA and all of these other alphabet intelligence agencies that are trying to weaken Russia while Russia is marching through NATO for the fourth time in Ukraine, pressure will burst the pipe. This is what it is. But Russia continues to invite this stuff. And I'm not advocating violence, but I'm saying for any Christian, the book talks. Oh, this squeaking chair. This book teaches you about an eye for an eye, right? Tooth for a tooth. If you nullify that law of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, your life is not worth living. So what Russia should have done or should be doing, every time there is a civilian casualty, that means that you are not respectable. You're not respecting international law. You're not respecting my territorial sovereignty and my territorial integrity, and you're not in the least worried about humanitarian efforts or the human part of this, because you're directly targeting civilians in Russia. Well, who's to say that your civilians should be safe now that mine are not? Who's to say that I should recognize a civilian's security when you're ignoring mine? Who's to say that these same things that are happening in my nation should not happen in yours? This is what I'm saying. Why should we, on the one hand, tie Russia's hand behind his back and say it must respect human life and civilian casualties, when the West is ignoring all of that and they are striking civilian territory? They're striking tenements where civilians are living. They're striking grocery stores where they go and shop. They're striking areas where a lot of civilians meet together. They're striking beaches, which has no strategic value at all. So I can't strike you back because now all of the laws that you ignored are tying my hand. Man, if you don't stop that, okay, we'll see. We'll see. See, this is the difference between me and them. And I believe this is why God did not allow me to be the head of a nation. Because you're not going to mistreat my citizens. You're not going to do this to them. And I will make it clear. I don't care if I have a nuclear weapon or not. If you ignore the interests of my nation, expect what you've done to me double fold. And if you escalate, triple fold. And then we're going to go and we're going to keep on. So if you strike me with one, I'm going to strike you with two. And then the next time around, when you strike me with 2, I'm going to strike you with 4. You go to 4, I'm not going to 8, I'm going to 16. And if that means escalation, then that's on you. That's not on me. Well, this could mean the end of the world. If you continue to allow them to do what they're doing, guess what happens? It's the end of the world anyhow. So it's some part of dignity in it. There must be some type of respect there. Everybody's screaming about, well, if Russia reacts, then the U.S. and NATO may take it another way. I don't give 2 flips about that. You don't get to punch me for free. You don't get to kick my children for free. You don't get to try to assassinate my wife and my mother for free. I would be less than a man to allow you to do that. And since you're going after the very things that are most dear to me, then guess what happens? The boomerang effect. Then I have to go after the ones who are dear to you. See, these nations, they allow America to they say, well, she's falling anyhow. We're going to allow her to do such and such as to try to avoid a war with America. Listen to me good, and I will say this, and I hope that this resonates within you. I hope that it drops in your head. America knows she's a falling power. She knows that her days are numbered. That will not yet stop her from waging war. She's going to do that regardless. And it's in the manner in which you treat her that she will be able to wage the war. Do you understand me? Let me see something real quick, everybody, before we go ahead on this. Shout out to my guy, Perseverance Chameleon is in the building. Yeah. And so this is what I'm saying. Why should all of the onus be on the victims? This is constantly being taught and pushed, whether they know it or not, in all of the alternative media. Well, we don't believe that Russia would strike a NATO territory. They would do it by proxy. To hell with proxy. If you're striking my territory, I'm striking yours. If you don't like to be struck, then don't strike me. I'm not going to see this. This is what I'm talking about with a lot of people. I notice in this world that people like to beat around the bush. They don't like to come straight to the point. They like to do all of this other stuff and then dance around the point. No. I'm going to treat you with the utmost respect until you have broken my trust. And then I will treat you the way that you have treated me. So if you strike me, I'll strike you. If you disregard the lives of my civilians, I'm going to disregard the lives of yours. To hell with international law. International law didn't stop you from striking and killing my citizens. And under international law, when that happens, I have the very inherent right to respond. So if you're going to think about killing and maiming and bombing and all of it, man, listen, a lot of this is Russia's fault. I'm telling you this. But while trying to avoid a direct confrontation with U.S. and NATO, they don't understand that by doing what they're doing, they are steering the Russian Federation into a direct confrontation with the West. Because the West feels like that they don't have to fear any escalation. Because Russia does not want to take on the NATO military machine. Russia does not want to do this. They may not, but they can. There's no way that you should allow them to be striking your territory after you warned them of the consequences of that. You know it. Listen, man, I know I sound harsh here, but sometimes reality is harsh. There is no flipping way on God's green earth that America will respect you if on one hand you say, listen, if you do this over here, this will be the response. And then they do it and you don't respond the way you said it. Then they say it again. If you do this, this will be the response. And then America responds. And Russia does not respond in the manner that they may respond another way, but they don't respond in the manner of which came out of Dmitry Medvedev's mouth. Once America has done that twice or 3 times, and you did not act, your deterrence is dead. You have to then reestablish some type of deterrence. because they understand that, hey, what you're trying to do at all costs is avoid a direct confrontation. Well, now you got to reevaluate. That avoiding thing is only pushing towards a direct confrontation. So what should you do? As Putin said out of his own mouth, he learned when he was a little kid on the streets of St. Petersburg, that if a fight was inevitable, you strike first. Right? That should be applied to Russian law, Russian politics. They keep getting socked in the chin, socked in the shin, kicked in the gut, kicked in the groin, and yet they smile and then they keep on. America will not yield. She will only escalate until you sock her. I'm not talking about socking her in Ukraine. That's not what I'm talking about. Because they are not just socking you in Ukraine. They're socking Russia in Russia. So now, someone should do the same thing to them. Am I advocating violence? No, I'm just saying, listen, for a minute, let's for the census, let's pretend that this country called the U.S. of Bay, the U.S. of Bay, all right, was striking you in your country, right, called Bussia or Cushion, right? Now, the U.S. of Bay continues to do that, and they're bombing you in Bussia, right? I'm saying this, you know what I'm talking about, but you know YouTube and all these others, they'll say I'm advocating by, so that's why I've switched the lingo around. Now, say the U.S. of Bay is attacking covertly strategic assets on my land and purposely killing civilians. Guess what I'll do? I'll activate my cells on the grounds in the U.S. of Bay. And we'll see how they like that when buildings explode, when people die, when all of that. Your citizens are no better than mine. Do you understand? If we're going to look at international law and the respect for life, then it can't be one-sided. That's not how things go. If you ignore the lives of my citizenry, then there's no reason for me to even think twice about yours. So to prevent the loss of life, strikes should be made outside of that nation that they're fighting over called Bhutan. You know what I'm talking about. And strike the surrounding allies of the U.S. of Bay. That shit would happen. See, not directly striking America or the U.S. of Bay, not directly striking them, but striking the allies. And every time there's an event that takes place on my, I'll hit them. And it'll be an errant missile or a couple errant missiles. But all of them will be Iskandar's or hypersonic, so when they hit, they're going to do a lot of damage. And it's an errant missile that just so happened to hit that missile base that you said didn't exist on that side of the border. So if you get all in your feelings, then we'll start pointing to my early warning radars that you attacked. The drone attacks on multiple military bases. The drones attack that tried to take out some of my bombers that deliver nuclear ordinances in case of war. We'll start talking about that too. And so we can escalate this if you want to escalate it. But if I sock you in your chops and you realize that I socked you in your chops hard and there was a big price to pay, then it's going to make you come down off that high horse that you're on, and you're going to have to look at a person eye to eye, face to face, and deal with the reality. Or else it's escalation, baby. We all got to die sometimes. It's a way to die. Not dying, groveling, and trying to avoid the conflict when there's no way to avoid it. A coward dies 1,000 deaths, but a soldier will die but once. Because you're fighting for a cause greater than what they're talking about. You're fighting for truth, freedom, justice, and equality. And those are the greatest causes that a man or woman could fight for. Because all of those produce productive life, productive civilizations, productive monetary systems, productive cultures. So if you are willing to give your life for that, you'll never die if you die physically. Because truth never dies. So it's a way to die. Are you going to stay living being scared to confront this bully? Or will you be willing to say, you know what, to hell with it. If death is a price that I got to pay, let me put the down payment on it right now and use these Iskander missiles and strike these bases that are arming these people who are striking my territory. Stop being a coward. Be a man, be a woman. Fear nobody but God, the true and living God. And I'm not advocating war. I'm advocating a method that can stop the war. But if Russia continues to be timid and only strike within Ukraine's border, Russia is in for some trouble. I'm telling you this now. I am up from slavery. My people served almost 400 years in slavery in America. So I know the American government like nobody else. And I'm telling you from an experience that no other people in the world could say that they experienced, to be enslaved for 400 years. And then to have it be ingrained systematically and systemic throughout the whole of America. If you do not recognize what America is, if you don't realize that America, this empire, will not stop, then right there, that's one of the nails in your coffin right there. She's not going to stop just because you wanted to, just because you bring up international law, just because you bring up a move to another currency. That's not how America works. It's all or nothing with her. She's got to dominate at all costs over everybody at all. Nobody's supposed to be her equal or close to her equal. You can be a superpower only if she's a hyperpower. You can be a regional power, but your regional power must eventually acquiesce to her so-called hyperpowerness. That's how things work. A lot of people don't want to address it because these are inconvenient truths. And when you've been brought up a certain way, sometimes this stuff, it takes time to compute, you know? So let's go to something real quick. Let's see. All right. Let's go back to something real quick. Give me a second. So look. Check this out. If America, I'm telling you, listen. Russia better get on their P's and Q's, bro. Because some of this stuff is looking like cowardice. I understand not to act in emotions, but I also understand the duty of the government. And some of this is starting to act like cowardice. To allow them to strike Russia proper, you know they doing it. You know Ukraine cannot master no attackers. You know they can't master those Storm Shadow missiles. And yet you continue to be bombarded by those. And then the West mocks it and says, yes, we're going to deliver another package to Ukraine of weapons such and such and such. And then you sit there and allow it. Interdict it. When America and NATO starts talking that crap about supplying some, say, and we will interdict it, whether it's on the Ukrainian territory or in NATO territory. Have you ever heard of interdiction? To stop these weapons before they get over there and can kill a huge amount of civilians or soldiers? Interdict that. Show them that you can be touched too. I don't advocate war. I don't advocate war. I don't advocate war. Let me go to something real quick before I read this article. All right? So, let me see. Where is it at right here? I got some clips I want to play for you all, right? But before I do that, where's this up? I want to play something that I have not played in a long time. And this is about that guy who did the numbers on the decrepit state of the American economy and America domestically. Okay, um, and they were holding this summit. I played this clip like maybe 3 times before on the show before, but I want you to see this, and this is what Russia and China and Iran should have in their mind. All of this stuff that you see with the West, it's a bluff. How in the hell can you fight a war when you don't have the finances? You need me to finance it. If I don't finance it, you don't have a war. So how am I going? Why would I finance a war against me? Especially when your economy is collapsing. Man, listen to what they said. And remember this. This was 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago when they gave these numbers. I want you to listen to this again. Pay close attention.
Dr. Francisco, just before the break, Clive made the point that you're trusting the medium rather than the person. When it comes to the United States, I don't trust the person or the medium. I'd be happy if I never bought another American thing or saw another American dollar because I don't like bullies. Isn't this partly the end of the era of the bully?
I think multipolarity is here. I think that's the key, and the dollar is dying. There is no question about it. Let me give you some figures that are quite important. The GDP of the United States is 24 trillion. The debt, the public debt, is 30 trillion. The difference between the total gross domestic product and the debt is 6 trillion. 6 trillion is equivalent to the combined GDPs of the whole of the Latin American countries together, including Brazil. That gives you an idea of the problem. That's number one. There is a US debt clock, which you can find in the internet. I ran it before coming to the show. And I ran it for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, the amount of debt that increased in the United States was 8 billion. Now, 8 billion is, if you have 3 of them, that is the GDP of Nicaragua. If you have 5 of them, that's the GDP of Bolivia. The United States have a very serious problem with infrastructure. Their productivity is low. The number of bridges in the United States that require urgent repair, not repair, urgent repair, is 65,000. The quality of the road, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, they produce a report every year, 42% of the roads are mediocre or in need of repair. The electricity plants, airports, and so on. Everything is a complete mess. The United States doesn't have high-speed trains. It doesn't. Sorry to say like this. Even Spain has them. So that gives you an idea of the problem. And the United States economy is growing at a rate of something between 2 and 1%. The Chinese economy, with all the problems, is growing at a rate of 7%. So that means in the next 10 years, arithmetically, the US economy is going to be 20% bigger, and the Chinese economy is going to be 70% bigger. Now, if you take what countries have done regarding this question of the dollar, possibly people do not know, but China and Japan are conducting their foreign trade in their currencies. Iran is conducting their business in no dollar. Russia and China, Iraq, and many other countries. But the recent decision by the Saudi Arabia to actually conduct the selling of their oil to China in yuan. Now, China buys 25% of the total output of Saudi Arabia. This is 30 billion. The United States purchases only 7%. So if you keep going down, you can see that there is already a multipolarity of initiatives. What we don't have is the international architecture, financially speaking, so that there is a system which is coherent, is international, it works, it has legal security that gives you legal confidence that if you enter into a transaction in that system, you know, whatever it is going to be respected. That has to happen, but it's beginning to take place already. So the United States is in a real trouble, and it doesn't have any possibility. I just looked at the budget that Joe Biden presented to Congress for 2023. It's a very long document. It has three key components. Number one, domestic security. It's going to give to the police, domestically, huge amount of resources The organization Black Lives Matter said, this is not what we want. You know what happened when they have resources. And basically, Biden is trying to get votes from the right by doing this. That's number one. Number two is international security. He increased the budget, the military budget, to $773 billion, which is $30 billion more than in the previous administration. And surprisingly, he's going to apply a tax of 20% on the fortunes of 100 million upwards, which is going to produce 360 billion, and it's going to reduce the budget deficit and the deficit of the United States by 1 trillion in 10 years. So it's totally useless. And in order for this budget to be passed, he needs to win it in the House, in Congress. He's got a majority.
Control over which he may well lose in November.
Certainly, but at the moment, if we were to propose it, he will pass it in the House, but he will not be able to pass it through Congress because there is 50-50. And Democrat right-wing, Joe Manchin, already said he's not going to support it. So it's already, not only is useless as a proposal to recover the economy, but it's already dead before it begins. So that gives you an idea of the problems that they have. So the issue, strategically, from their point of view, is this. Do they continue waging war against everybody else? And who else is there to wage war? Their calculation, it seems to me, was if we are able to bully Russia and make them accept our way, and then later on we'll continue with that until, we produce something equivalent to regime change, isolating China thereby, and therefore the next move is to attack China. And this one hasn't worked. The next one is certainly not going to work. So the United States is desperate because he's facing a very serious challenge. Number one, energy and resources from Russia to Europe, which really needs them, and the Belt and Road Initiative by China, which is, at the moment, is in the region of $5 trillion. So therefore, facing with this huge, very attractive embrace from these two nations that have huge resources, one natural resource, the other one technology, markets, money, and credit, and investment, infrastructure, is very difficult to say no. So the only possibility for them is war, war, war.
I want to go back to something that he said at the beginning, if you guys will permit me. It's something that's stuck in my head, and then we'll go back to this thing. I just want to play the first minute or so over again because it's something that he said that's stuck in my head. And I just want to go back to make sure what he said is what I heard. And if it's not, then I'll leave it alone. But I just want to go back and listen 1 second. So guys, pay close attention.
Dr. Francisco, just before the break, Clive made the point that you're trusting the medium rather than the person. When it comes to the United States, I don't trust the person or the medium. I'd be happy if I never bought another American thing or saw another American dollar because I don't like bullies. Isn't this partly the end of the era of the bully?
I think multipolarity is here. I think that's the key. And the dollar is dying. There is no question about it. Let me give you some figures that are quite important. The GDP of the United States is 24 trillion. The debt, the public debt, is 30 trillion. The difference between the total gross domestic product and the debt is 6 trillion. 6 trillion is equivalent to the combined GDPs of the whole of the Latin American countries together, including Brazil. That gives you an idea of the problem. That's number one. There is a US debt clock, which you can find in the internet. I ran it before coming to the show. And I ran it for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, the amount of debt that increased in the United States was 8 billion. Now, 8 billion is if you have...
That's what I wanted to hear. I thought that's what I heard. He said he ran it for the debt clock. He ran it for 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, the amount of debt that the U.S. accumulated was $8 billion. That's what he said. Let's look at it again now, because I don't want to say something that's not right. Let's go back to this one more time, because we're going to do some math in a second. And we're not going to do the funny money math, okay? We're going to do some basic math. And I can be wrong and miscalculate, or something's not right with that debt clock or something. So let's look at this again. Just pay close attention to this because this is very important. Pay close attention.
Dr. Francisco, just before the break, Clive made the point you're trusting the medium rather than the person. When it comes to the United States, I don't trust the person or the medium. I'd be happy if I never bought another American thing or saw another American dollar because I don't like bullies. Isn't this partly the end of the era of the bully?
I think multipolarity is here. I think that's the key. And the dollar is dying. There is no question about it. Let me give you some figures that are quite important. The GDP of the United States is 24 trillion. The debt, the public debt is 30 trillion. The difference between the total gross domestic product and the debt is 6 trillion. 6 trillion is equivalent to the combined GDPs of the whole of the Latin American countries together, including Brazil. That gives you an idea of the problem. That's number one. There is a US debt clock, which you can find in the internet. I ran it before coming to the show. And I ran it for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, the amount of debt that increased in the United States was 8 billion. Now, 8 billion is, if you have 3 of them.
Let me move this up. That's what I thought he said. 8 billion. All right. Now, let's do some math. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but let's do a little math, okay? Because these numbers are not adding up to me. Okay. He says that when he came to the show before he came in, he let the debt clock run for 5 minutes, and it accumulated $8 billion in 5 minutes. Now let's look at this. So 5 goes into 60, right? How many times? Tell me how many times does 5 go into 60? 12, right? So we can count 5 12 times in an hour, right? Now and then we say, so that's 12 times that we can count that 5 minutes. And we multiply that by how many hours? 24, right? Which is a day. Then we multiply that by 365 days in a year, which brings us to 105,120. That's what we come to, right? Now, if we were to then, okay, that's equals that. Now we're going to multiply that times what he said, because remember, these are trenches of 5 minutes. Throughout the whole year, these are trenches of 5 minutes. And each 5 minutes, we know, can give you no less than $8 billion, according to him, right? And according to what he saw. Now we'll do. Do you know how much that is? That is unreal. If this would be in the trillions of dollars. You understand? So what I'm telling you, why did I do that? I did that to show you that there's some funny money bookkeeping going on with the United States. There is no way when your tax revenues are dying, you have no industrial base, little to none. You continue to spend, what is it called? Hike your debt ceiling. Do you understand that's a default also? For those of you who are listening. Do you understand that to hike your debt ceiling is a default? Because to hike your debt ceiling means that you are adding more debt because you didn't have the wherewithal to pay that debt. Do you understand? So to keep from officially defaulting, you raise the debt ceiling and add more debt for what you can take on, but you didn't pay the debt that you had the debt ceiling at. So that is a default by default, right? No pun intended. And this goes on yearly. And they say that the American government has never defaulted on debt, and we see it daily, right? So let's go a little further. I told you I won't keep you long on this, but we got to address some of this stuff. See, I'm telling you, the reason the U.S. the UK and the Israelis and the NATO's are lashing out is because they're losing everything. Everything. And so when we see this end over here with the terrorism and the threat for war, we also got to look at the monetary part of it. Because without the finance, what does that old song says? Without finance, no romance. Huh? So without financing, America and the West cannot go on their romance of conquering the entire world. And they're mad about that. So let's go into this article real quick. Time is of the essence. Pentagon has nothing to say about strike on Crimean beach with U.S. supplied weapons. So listen, the Pentagon says it has nothing to say about that. So guess what would happen? When so-called, because America can make up terrorists. So Russia can too. I would arm them, send them into Iraq and Syria with Iskander missiles and Strela air defense systems and Panzer systems, and I have them to attack their bases. And then when they start, well, these were done with Russian weapons. Well, when they come in, we have no comment on it. We sell weapons to everybody. And we don't keep a log on who's doing this, and we don't tell them what they can and can't do. Give America a taste of our own medicine. Give the West a taste of their own medicine. But the problem is, Vladimir Putin, he's still holding out hopes that after this war, we can still do business with the West. He realigned himself with Asia out of necessity, because the Asian bloc, the global South, have been calling Russia into the fold for the longest. But you have those who are adamant about being a part of the European culture that steer the helm. And I'm not saying that's Vladimir Putin, but I'm saying he has a large portion of his government that makes that up. And so they're still holding out crazy hope that, hey, we can avoid escalation. And one day when all this is over, the sanctions will be removed and we can be accepted back into the fold. That's what they're holding out for. They just see the BRICS and everybody else as a counterweight. What they should do is embrace that and leave the West to the West's own collapse. Because if you want to integrate in what you know is collapsing, when it collapses, guess what it's going to do? It's going to have a knock-on effect, a domino effect, which will eventually collapse you. You understand? This is not so hard. But I guess they make it out to be hard. So it says, Washington is providing the intelligence data for Kyiv's attack and strikes, the Russian Defense Ministry has stated. Now, if the Russian Defense Ministry has stated that the United States is providing the data, right? Then it doesn't matter who's doing the firing. It's the one who's directing the firing, right? Because Kyiv could just fire missiles and they can just go anywhere. But if America is giving them the targeting data, they are more to blame than the ones who have actually, so-called, quote-unquote, pulled the trigger. So Russia should strike out. Man, listen to me good. They're better than me with this stuff here. Because they continue to cry, moan, and they're doing such and such. Well, if you know it, respond. You act like you are a junior power to them. Know that, respond. Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? Isn't that what the people are demanding? Isn't that what mid to low-ranking soldiers in Russia are saying? And some generals? Aren't they demanding a response not just in Ukraine, but a response into NATO? Because regardless of what America talks about NATO territory, that was Soviet territory. So America has no claim to that at all. So instead of you screaming about America supplying the targeting data to strike you, how about you let America know openly that you're supplying these weapons to these terrorist groups or so-called terrorist groups or these operatives, these covert operatives, and say you're supplying the data. Oh yeah, we're just supplying the data to them. We've given them the Iskanders, we've given them the Bucks, and we've given them the Taurs, and to defend themselves against any airstrikes. Yeah, we've given them the targeting data. We have nothing to do with them striking U.S. bases and facilities that are illegally in Syria or in Iraq. But hell, we are doing the targeting. And when America starts screaming and crying about that, say, suck it up. Then you do it to us. Suck it up. Now, if you want to do something, then let's do it then. Stop playing these little games behind closed doors. These little proxy things. If you want to do it, do it. But don't for 1 second believe that I'm going to allow you to carry out these acts of terror against me and my nation, and there's no response. Man, you're crazy as bat. I can't even say what I was going to say. But you crazy as hell. You are crazy as hell if you think I'm going to allow you to endanger my family and not respond. That is showing a disregard and no appreciation for the very things that God has blessed you with. Life. Life. If you want to show God how thankful you are for your life, you defend it like hell. That's why that is the first law in nature, which is self-preservation. No other law trumps that. No other law. Not international law. None of it. Because this is the universal law. And that's what they should be talking about. Man, listen to me good. Thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and enjoyment and enlightenment. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your brother, your host, and your friend, Rashid. Thank you for joining me on another channel member stream, and it is fire. We go out the same way that we come in each and every time with love in our heart for each and every one of you who loves truth, but know that the love that we have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. I'm still out of here.